Welcome to this latest edition of the Ril Dil Podcast on this 17th of December 2020. We are, less than 8 days away from Christmas. Hope everybody out there is being safe. We are, got a little bit of snowstorm on the East Coast yesterday. Throughout the course of yesterday, didn't get much in the DMV, but, heard New York, Boston, Jersey kind of got hit hard, so hopefully everybody up there is safe. I'll be heading up there soon. Um, a lot to discuss as we head towards, the heart of the holiday of the Christmas season. Busy weekend coming up with the football, college and pro. But we're going to begin with the National Football League, the NFL owners approving the formula for the 17th game of for 2021. Now, the 17th game officially has not been approved as of yet. They're going to wait. They'll wait until next year, and it will get approved. Sometime in March or in the off season before next season starts. So there will be 17 games next in 2021 in the NFL. There's no two ways about it. But the formula has been approved, where you're going to have the NFC versus AFC. You'll probably have a situation where you have the first place teams taking on like an NFC East first place team taking on a AFC East first place team, something like that. So they ironed out all those quirks, and they have that. That definitely will be there. Definitely will be a 17th game next season, because number one, I mean, how much money was lost because of the pandemic with no fans. Um, Players, you'll hear the normal gripes and moans and complaints, but the bottom line, especially in the NFL, the players want their money. That's all there is to it. It's not 18 games, it's 17 games. So they will push back a little bit, but this is going to get passed. Remember, under the CBA, there was a window where the owners could push for a 17th game within the next. I think that window was from like 2020 to 2023. So that's definitely going to happen um, come next season. PGA will not mandate vaccine players or spectators to take the vaccine, um, which makes sense from a standpoint that, again, I'm you know regardless of what you believe in terms of the vaccine, no one should be forced to take the vaccine. And listen, I'm not, and this whole ideal that if you choose not to take the vaccine, that you're against science, is a bunch of bullshit. It's not the case. I'm not taking the vaccine anytime soon. Again, I probably, for my age group, and considering, I won't be eligible for it until next summer, the way it's being rolled out. But even then, I'm going to see what it's looking like from in terms of others who have taken it before me. So no one should be forced to take the vaccine. You're not, and you're not pro-Trump if you choose not to take the vaccine. It's not a political thing if you choose not to take the vaccine. Similar to what we've seen it with masks, when people choosing not to wear masks. Again, it'll be very interesting to see how many people actually take it. Um, we've had a number of Black doctors, African American doctors, come out and say, "Hey, I'm going to take it because I want I want African Americans to take it, or just to show that, hey, it's safe." Okay, that's fine. More power to them. Remember, a lot of these doctors, that really don't have a choice but to take them, especially if you're on the front line. So keep that in mind as well. But again, I'm not surprised by this decision by the PGA whatsoever. And plus, with golf, you can actually social distance, unlike football, unlike basketball, even baseball to a lesser extent, hockey. There's, golf, you have to be doing something. I mean, you really have to be out there in the streets, in these streets, if you catch the COVID playing golf. Like that's so even with spectators. I mean, the golf courses are so massive, they can spread people out. They can even have, you can have small gatherings, small crowds. It's outdoors. So golf is a sport that honestly is tailor made to be played during this pandemic more than just about, I would say more than just about any other sport. To be honest with you, to be perfect, maybe with the exception of tennis indoor, tennis indoors with no spectators. But in terms of spectators, golf is tailor made to be played during this particular time. So no surprise that, no surprise whatsoever that they're not going to make players or spectators take a vaccine. Here we go. So Giannis staying put. The Greek freak is going to remain a Milwaukee Buck for at least the next 4 years. He signs a 5-year, $228 million contract. He has an out after 4 years. Well, next 5 years because it's a contract extension. He has an out after 4 years. Makes him going to be high. He is the richest contract in NBA history. NBA history. Listen, right place, right time. 2-time MVP. We know what type of player he is. Legit top 3 player without question. And so happens just he's only 26 years old. So this is, he could be a free agent again at the age of 30, and he'll probably sign another 5-year, $300 million contract. Now, the question is who will he sign that contract with? That remains to be seen. But I'll say this: I give Giannis a lot of credit. I'm not going to try to over analyze this. It's very simple. Giannis is a different type of dude from a standpoint. He was not born in America. He didn't come along. He didn't come up in this culture where where players are bouncing from team to team. Didn't come up. He genuinely feels loyal to the Milwaukee Bucks and to that organization and to them, taking a chance on them with which turned out to be which will turn out to be one of the great draft signings of all time. This guy was drafted, I believe, 15th in the first round. In the first round of that 2000, say 13 draft. Yeah, I think that 2000. Yeah, I think he was drafted in the 2013 in that 2013 13th draft, 13 or 14 draft. But again, one of the great steals of all time. Like no one, when he came to the league, no one could foresee that this guy would one day be an MVP and in a conversation as one of the best players in the world. I give him a lot of credit because he wants to win. He wants to win in Milwaukee. He wants and with him, if he's able to pull it off, he's able to win a championship in Milwaukee. That championship will mean, that will be like a dirt and a whiskey type championship. That will mean, if you can win a championship in a small market, you can win a championship without having a multitude of all-stars around you. Those championships are going to count for more. This is all there is to it. Now, they still need to upgrade the talent around him. So Milwaukee, Milwaukee's still on the clock. That clock, of course, gets extended by 4 years, but they're still on the clock. And listen, he's given them an extra 4 years, 4 years to kind of to kind of build this franchise around him in regards to putting a team that is that can win a championship. Does he have to get better? Absolutely, but the work is not done for that franchise. Adding players and adding pieces around him to win a championship and to win possibly multiple championships. You have a guy, there's no question that this guy is a generational talent. You have a guy of this magnitude, you shouldn't just win one championship. You should win multiple championships. Multiple. Now, they will go in as one of the favorites to come out the East without question. I still think, even with Drew Holiday, even with some of the moves they made, I still think a healthy Brooklyn team is better. I still think Philly probably has a higher ceiling, but we'll see if Philly can stay healthy. We don't know what's going to happen with James Harden, where he can possibly end up. And I'll tell you right now, If I'm Milwaukee, I would be on the phone with Houston like right now, saying, "Hey, Middleton, some draft picks, but let's let's have a conversation. Let's have a conversation." So, because playing with Giannis is easy. He's an easy guy to play for, to play with. Not very unselfish. He's not going to dominate the basketball. He's going to do all the little things. He's going to play defense. He's going to rebound, and doesn't need a lot. Frankly, doesn't need a lot of shots to score the basketball. People keep talking about the parts of his game that he needs to work on. Forget about the jump shot. Giannis needs just get a back to the basket game, and he will be absolutely unstoppable. Get a back to the back. He's an above average passer. He's a willing passer at that. He gets a back to the back. He gets a back to the basket game. It'd be game over. Be game over. I'm not worried about his mid range. I'm not worried about his 3-point shot. This jump shot. The guy does his damage in the paint. That's where I want him, in the paint. I don't want him taking a lot of jump shots. Definitely don't want him taking 3-point shots. I know he's improved as a 3-point shooter. And I know, unlike Ben Simmons up to this point, that he's a willing taker of 3-point shots. But to be honest with you, when Giannis takes 3-point shots, if I'm a defensive player, if I'm the other team, I'm just saying thank you, keep shooting, keep shooting. And as far as mid range, again, he's not a pull up jump shooter. It's not like, again, maybe he will eventually add that to his game. But to me, the immediate thing that he needs to add to his game is a back to the basket post game. He has that. They can, that will take that team to another level. Because then, you have no choice but to double team him. Again, he's a guy who's a willing passer. He's a guy that no one, can handle one-on-one in the post. With his athleticism, with his strength, he's gotten stronger over the course of his career. So everybody's focused on his jump shot. I say, I will be looking at him this season in terms of how much has he improved in terms of his post game. But regardless of that, he stays put. Certain team, Miami. I'm sure Miami's and Toronto's probably the other worlds are not probably not happy. But again, you couldn't bang your whole future on whether or not Giannis was going to blow off this extension and become a free agent in 2021. The tea leaves started to kind of feel like that he was going to resign with Milwaukee. Hearing reports and hearing whispers even within the last couple of weeks that this was probably going to be the more likely outcome with him with Milwaukee. And listen, the situation is different from, they're talking about LeBron James' situation. Milwaukee has done a way better job in Cleveland, and they are much better. Milwaukee compared to Cleveland is not even close as far as well-run franchises. If you compare Giannis now with Milwaukee to what LeBron was with Cleveland at any time in his career, especially at the beginning of his career. I mean, some of the moves that they made and some of those teams that they put around them were a joke. I'm talking about the first iteration. I'm not talking about the Kyrie Irving, Kevin Love, Cleveland Cavaliers. I'm talking about like the Mo Williams, Delonte West, Boobie Gibson, those guys like that. Those teams, old Shaq, Ben Wallace. I mean, the list goes on and on. So that team was not well run. They did an awful job of putting pieces around LeBron, and he left. Giannis, different story. They continuously tried to add pieces. They tried, the Bledsoe trade did not work out. They didn't do a good job with not keeping Malcolm Brogdon, but they get Drew Holiday. They have shooters all around on the team. Not Brook Lopez, but Yeah, Brooke Lopez, a couple years ago. So they've done a good job. They've done a very good job at building around them. It's just a matter of, I think they need to pull the trigger on either getting James Harden or going after Bradley Beal. I think, and if you combine that and Giannis takes his game, continues to improve, which he has every year of his career, Milwaukee will be right there in terms of possibly winning a championship. Now, if all that happens and they still can't win it or get to the finals, then you need to change coaches. So if they get a Bradley Beal, if Giannis comes back a better player, and you still can't make the finals, then you need another coach. But overall, I think is great for the NBA. To be honest with you, small market. It's a great story. It's a guy who has a connection to the franchise, a connection to the community, to the fan base, and the big winners of this are the Milwaukee fans, and good for you. You can root, the NBA. Listen, it's no secret that the NBA has become a rooting for the players versus rooting for the teams. That's unless you're a fossil like myself, and where you grew up as a Laker fan, and you have been a Laker fan throughout all the through and through thick and thin. And there was a little there's been a couple of thin gaps for of the Lakers during the last 30 plus years. Not that many, but a couple. But for the most part, in 2020, fans root for the player, the individual player, not the Miami Heat. They're rooting for LeBron James and Dwayne Wade's, or and what have you. Rooting for Joel Embiid's and Ben Simmons's. But excellent for the Bucks, great for the NBA. We will see what happens as the season inches closer. December 22nd being opening night. As far as NFL week 14, who's hot and who's not? Let's deal with the hot. The Buffalo Bills. There are some people think that Buffalo right now is the best team in football and playing the best football of any team in the league. Hard to disagree. I don't think they're the best team in football, but you have to love what you're seeing out of the Buffalo Bills. They have a franchise quarterback. They have talent up and down the board offensively. They have a defense that can that can create takeaways. Um, Buffalo's playing, and look at their losses. They've lost some very close games. I mean, the Kansas City game, for the most part, was a nip and tuck game. We saw what happened with Arizona on the Hail Mary at the end with DeAndre Hopkins. So Buffalo has played extremely well this season. I listen. Buffalo can beat anybody on any given day in the playoffs. I told you this last week. I told you this. There's no dominant team, and I would love to see Buffalo and Kansas City. I would love to see them get another crack at Kansas City. Green Bay Packers. They have right now the MVP of the league in terms of Aaron Rodgers. He is playing as well as he's ever played in his life. And that's saying a lot, considering that he's been a two-time MVP, and for the better part over the course of his career, there was a 4 to 5 year period where he was the best player in football. He right now, week 14, heading to week 15, he is the MVP of the league. 39 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. He's getting their games right now. He's at a level right now. He'll start off the game like 11 for 11 or 12 for 13. Like, he's back on that level right now. Accuracy is back to where it once was. Devontae Adams is one of the biggest beneficiaries of that, as he's been. Devontae Adams probably will be first team All Pro in terms of receivers this year. Leads the league in touchdown catches. Again, the Packers defense is not anything to write home about, but there's no team in the NFL that doesn't come without flaws. And if you're going to pick a side of the ball where you rather be lacking, you'd much rather be lacking defensively than offensively. Kansas City Chiefs. I know the Chiefs have struggled over the last month, but the bottom line is they've won 8 straight games, and they find different ways to win. They are a team they're not a dominant team, but they do have the best player in the sport in Patrick Mahomes. Even though right now I think he would be runner up to Aaron Rodgers in terms of the MVP. He's still Patrick Mahomes, still great. That team still knows how to win, and that team, gun to my head, is still to me the team to beat in the NFL as far as who will be hosting the hoisting the Vince Lombardi Trophy. Big time matchup this week on 4:25 on Sunday as they will travel down to New Orleans to take on the Saints. Can't wait to see that matchup with the Saints defense versus that Chief offense. And the Washington football team. Now, if I would have told you before the season that they would be on a who's hot list, it wouldn't have been the type of hot in terms of winning games. Listen, you got to give Ron Rivera all the credit in the world for shifting the culture of this team in such a short period of time. The defense played great throughout the course of the season. They are a legit top 5 defense. We saw what they did against San Francisco. Chase Young was all over the place, and they can rotate their defensive line. They have a lot of depth at that defensive line. Alex Smith, again, does not turn over the ball. He's not going to beat you by himself. He's not going to beat you with his legs anymore. He's not that player. But what he does do is, of course, knows how to manage a game and does not turn over the ball. So a lot of great karma with this Washington team. They have a big time matchup against the Seattle Seahawks this week. Looking forward to that. And right now they stand at top the NFC East division. And listen, a lot of football to be played. 3 games left. But you have to like the chances of this team to possibly get to the playoffs. And again, remember, before the season, they were in contention to be one of the worst football teams in the NFL. Like, people were talking about them about possibly what would happen if they ended up getting the number 1 pick. They were in that conversation amongst the teams that could be a candidate to get the number 1 pick. Again, culture. And again, Ron Rivera deserves all the credit in the world. He should get some consideration for Coach of the Year. Probably won't win it. I'd probably go to McDermott for Buffalo or Flores possibly for Miami. But the job that Rivera, you have to, again, unless you root for this team, you live in this town, you have no idea how bad this culture is or was before Rivera got here, how toxic it was. And again, to turn it around in seemingly just 1 year is remarkable. And again, it's not. Listen, you can talk all you want about the division. Forget about the division. We know the division is bad, but I'm just looking at how they're playing football. They're not beating themselves. Defense has developed somewhat ahead of schedule. And we know they have some limitations offensively. They don't have great personnel offensively. They have one guy offensively that scares you in terms of Terry McLaurin. That's it offensively. The offensive line is not what it once was. The running, Gibson's is a nice back. He's not an elite back, and he's a nice back. So they're doing this with defense and culture. Who's not? The Steelers. Kind of been an overreaction about the Steelers. The Steelers, listen, the Steelers were not going to go undefeated. They've lost 2 straight, but everybody needs to calm down. The Steelers are still a Super Bowl contending team. Make no mistake about it. They can right this ship and get themselves back into form before the playoffs start. And remember, home field advantage does not mean, now you want the bye week. Of course you want the bye week. Absolutely. You get an extra week of rest. So that does mean something. But, it's going to be, regardless of who has home field and who doesn't, who has the number 1 seed and who doesn't, the road is going to be difficult. And it's going to be a different type of road anyway because of COVID. That's that's all there is to it. I'm not off the Steelers bandwagon. I'm not surprised that people are jumping off the Steelers bandwagon because that's what we do in sports. We overreact to every recent game or every recent moment. Now we know what the issues are with the Steelers. They're nicked up on defense. Bud Dupree, that is a devastating injury. that he suffered, a couple weeks back against Baltimore. We know they cannot run the ball right now. That can be fixed. The running game can be fixed, and their defense is good enough where they have enough talent to overcome the loss of Bud Dupree, who's a tremendous player. Do not discount the Steelers. If you discount the Steelers, you're making a big mistake. If you write up the Steelers as a Super Bowl contender, they absolutely are a contender. Las Vegas Raiders. The Raiders have had some just off the charts wins. I mean, the Raiders have beaten the Saints and beaten the Chiefs, but they've had some horrible losses. So the Raiders are one of these Jekyll and Hyde teams. We know they have a lot of talent offensively. Don't necessarily trust it. We, of course, don't trust their defense. But they're not playing well right now. And of course, the coldest team and I don't mean that in a good way, the New York Football Jets, who are going to go 0-16 and will be atop the Trevor Lawrence sweepstakes. How about if you're Trevor Lawrence right now? Like, if you're Trevor Lawrence, you better savor every moment in this pandemic college football season, because you're headed to the Jets. You are headed Jets, Jets. You are headed to the New York Football Jets. They're gonna cut Darnold or make him a backup, whatever. They'll probably get rid of him. I don't know. But it's saying that. By the way, it's absolute no-brainer. Trevor Lawrence is a franchise caliber quarterback in terms of his skill set, his potential. So that's a no-brainer. You absolutely draft him. Don't even think twice about Darnold. Cut your losses and keep it moving. But man, you talk about a shitty culture. I mean, the Jets, my goodness. That franchise is the epitome of can't get right. And if I was Trevor Lawrence's people, I would definitely consider of holding out, of not what. I can't blame Trevor Lawrence if he pulls a Eli Manning. I would not want to go to that franchise. I'll tell you right now. Not by any stretch of imagination would I want to go to that franchise. One other note about the NFL, of course, you had a classic game Monday night, Browns, Baltimore. Baltimore seems to have a second life, and they're probably going to make the playoffs. Cleveland, give Cleveland credit. Mayfield has played well this season, especially in the last 5 or 6 weeks. I think that, we talk about culture. That Cleveland's doing it the right way by not forcing Mayfield to be the guy to carry them. They had the excellent offensive line, 2 excellent running backs, so they're doing it the right way from that standpoint. As far as Baltimore goes, I don't know what to make of the Lamar Jackson, alleged cramp break. He leaves the field for like 5 to 7 minutes, and it almost cost him the game. To be honest with you, he comes back just as McSorley hurts his knee. Now, he says that he was getting IVs. There are other guys. Joe Thomas had some comments. Joe Thomas, of course, the former great Cleveland offensive tackle, basically said that it doesn't take that long to get IVs. You can get IVs on the sideline. So what happens is you get conspiracy theories. Was he taking the shit? Was he really hurt? A bunch of shit right now that's neither here nor there because they won the game, but certainly not a good look if you're Lamar Jackson to lead the game, go in the locker room, and not having been some type of injury. So again, I'm sure it will come out eventually, but it's sudden. That's nothing you want to make a habit of by any means. By any means, not something you want to make a habit of leaving the field. Regards to that, it's an excellent win for the for the Baltimore Ravens. Um, Now again, neither defense could stop. Neither defense had a chance in that game. Quarterbacks just went down the field at will, especially in the fourth quarter. Um, Listen, I think if you're Baltimore and you have Lamar Jackson, you know, just I think you just let Lamar just do Lamar. Stop worrying about him pocket passing and all this stuff. And, let him move in out the pocket, let him run, let him do what he does. He clearly is not at that point in his career to where he can beat people from the pocket. And it's like, you can't change who he is right now. Maybe, hopefully, for the sake of him and for the sake of their franchise, that becomes an evolution where he can, develop into a quarterback that can beat you from the pocket. But for right now, you just got to let him run because frankly, for the most part, no one has stopped it. For the most part, no one has stopped him from running. Maybe outside, maybe Pittsburgh in that first game, I thought did a pretty good job on him, but they may have did a decent job on him, but it opened up the rest of the running game because to where Baltimore almost had basically 200 yards rushing against Pittsburgh in that game. So I think you just gotta let him do him. And the best version of Lamar Jackson right now is a guy that beats you with his legs. That is clearly the best version of him at this point. So there you go. Have it for week 14. Um, Again, hopefully you have a situation where as of right now, the schedule is back on track. So there are no scheduled games for next Tuesday or Wednesday. And hopefully you can finish the season that way. Though, again, I just can't believe that COVID will not have a say in how the season goes moving forward, whether it be who's in Super Bowl or whether it be, possible, week 18 game. So good. So James Harden is back with Houston. He played in a preseason game earlier this week against San Antonio. I think he had like 12 points in 21 minutes, like 3 of 10. Whatever. That's inconsequential. A lot of stuff has been coming out with Harden about his role in regards to how the culture of the Houston Rockets currently stands, and his role in that, and his dictation of that. Here's what I'll say. I don't blame James Harden for the current culture of the Houston Rockets. I blame the Houston Rockets as a organization, ownership, Daryl Morey, as a franchise as a whole. What happens is, Harden's been there for 8 years, and he has as many conference finals appearances as they do first round exits. They by far came the closest to beating a healthy Golden State super team with Kevin Durant. It's not even close. By far, they came the closest. No one else even sniffed that. Even sniffed Golden State when they were healthy with Kevin Durant. So, and he's won the MVP, finished countless times in the top 3 in MVP voting. Listen, how I feel about James Harden. He's missed the regular season. His regular season dominance has not translated to postseason play. Okay. But he's a superstar player. I think that what happens is you get a guy like James Harden, or a guy on James Harden's level, you have that, and if you mix that in, if you combine that with a weak culture in terms of the front office, this is what you're going to get. This is what you're going to get. James Harden is not doing this in Miami. He's not doing this in San Antonio. This is not happening. But those franchises, those cultures are few and far between. Period. Players are gonna, it's kind of like I was told on. I've been in education for 18 years now. And someone told me a long time ago, and it's some of the best advice that I ever received, professional or otherwise. The student doesn't set the culture, or should not set the culture. You, as the teacher, the adult figure in the room, should set the culture. If there's not an adult in the room, and I'm not talking about physically, I'm talking about in terms of someone setting the culture, then you don't have a class. And that's not the kid's fault. That is your fault as the adult. And listen, I don't want to. And again, I don't want to hear about Russell Westbrook in terms of being allegedly being appalled by this. He did the same thing in Oakland. He did about 85% or close to 90% of what James Harden has done in Houston. He did in OKC. Own parking spot, dictating practice schedules, dictating when the team playing flies, dictating the music in the locker room, all that shit. Dictating, by the way, dictating something what the team ate in terms of the meals within the locker room, shit like that. All that shit. Yeah, please. Now, was Russell Westbrook late? No. Is Russell Westbrook out in these streets in the clubs? Probably no. He's a family man. Yeah, so he's definitely not giving another grown man $300,000. That's definitely not happening with Westbrook. But I don't want to hear about this. This is the reason why he left and the coach. No, he left because he wanted to play. He didn't want to play second fiddle to James Harden on the basketball court. It had nothing to do with the culture of that team. Yeah, but Westbrook knew what it was before he got there because trust me, it's been like that for the better part of since Harden got to Houston, and Westbrook being a star knows how all stars and those MVPs get treated because he got treated the same way, in OKC. So to me, I look at this situation again. A player, you know, these guys only are going to take advantage of bad cultures or media or suspect cultures. That's all there is to it. Especially if you're somebody that's going to get the majority of the blame if the team doesn't win. You have to answer all the questions, in terms of the media. With the media, all the attention is on you. So there's a lot of weight that's carried by a franchise caliber player, a player of James Harden's ilk. Now, am I excusing what James Harden, how he's behaved, going to Vegas, not having a mask on, partying? No, absolutely not. It's completely unprofessional and just dangerous, considering what our country is dealing with, our country's current predicament from a medical standpoint. But as far as some of the things that he's been doing in Houston for 8 years, he's been doing it for the better part of 8 years. It's not new here. Nothing new under the sun. Tim McMahon had that report in ESPN, and it was right on the money. And McMahon, he's right. He's there as he's been a reporter in Houston for a long time. So he's definitely has the pulse of what's going on down there. Nothing in that report came of any surprise to me, and should have came of any surprise to anybody who's followed James Harden, who's followed the NBA. Period. So to me, it's just a matter of now. It's a matter of not if, but when he will get traded. If you're Houston, you get the best deal possible. Period. Just get the best deal. Don't even worry about where he wants to go. Your job is to get the best deal possible for your franchise moving forward. So the NCAA and the Supreme Court are going to are going to meet in 2021, and this could be something that basically changes the complete landscape of college athletics, in particular football and basketball. Um, the NCAA is holding on to dear life as far as wanting to keep players completely as amateurs. And what's happening, and the smart thing for the NCAA to do would be to cut a deal with the players and basically and say, you know what, we've gotten fat off these players for years, gotten rich, wealthy off these players for years upon years, and just recognize that that time is done. In particular with basketball, football has a bit of a stranglehold because you can't turn pro if you're a high school phenom, no matter even if you're physically strong enough or big enough to play in the NFL. It's just not, it's just not going to happen from a physical standpoint. More than likely, not going to happen in terms of coming out after a freshman year, coming directly from high school. So football, as a bit, if you're a football player, come out, you're at a disadvantage. You have to probably wait at least 2 or 3 years before you could make some serious money. Basketball players, the McDonald's All-American who has pro talent coming out of high school, that guy or the one and done guy, that guy does not need the NCAA right now. That guy can go make money in the G League, or even better yet, can go overseas and be a millionaire. Does not need college basketball. And the sooner the NCAA recognizes this, the better off they will be as an entity. Because what's happening, and you're seeing this throughout life and corporations and throughout, especially in the music industry, and especially in the industry that I'm in terms of content creator. As a content creator, if you have the people, you got a built-in audience that that fucks with your content, you don't need to go through the middleman. You don't need to go through the systems. You don't need to go through the record labels. You can get deals through YouTube. You can get deals, streaming deals with companies who want to mess with your product. You can get ad revenue. And again, the NCAA needs to get out of this archaic way of thinking in 2020. That time is done. That time is done. The players, the players are the most valuable commodity. And again, they are just trying to hang on to that last bit of strand to where they want players to remain as amateurs and want to continue. And the thing about it, they want to basically cap what players can make. So they've come around a little bit on possibly paying players, but they want to decide and dictate how much players can possibly be paid. It's not going to work out, and I would not be surprised with the Supreme Court decision come 2021 that they rule in favor of the players, and it completely destroys what the NCAA has looked like for the better part of the last, how 60, 70, 80 years. And it's been long overdue, to be honest with you. And the NCAA has made billions upon billions on the backs of African American athletes, in particular with basketball and football. Those two sports, they have made by far. Well, those two sports bring in more money than all the sports combined, easily. It's not even close. What the NCAA tournament does, what these bowl games are doing, what these conferences with television contracts are doing. Big Ten Network, SEC Network, ACC Network. There would be no Big Ten Network without football. Period. You wouldn't have these networks without football. And 70% of the players that play football are African American. So a reckoning is coming with the NCAA. Is all there is to it. You already have individual states who are getting ready for it as well, in terms of coming up with different ways that they can pay players, because they see the future. They see the future. They see where this thing is going. You know, if you you know if you're smart, if you're a university, you're the NCAA, then why not have a guy like Trevor Lawrence have his own, offer him like $2 million a year. You know what I'm saying? Like to me, if the NCAA actually shared with the players, the sport would become even bigger. It would become even bigger. Like they would make even more money. That money that they would share with the players, that money would get recouped easily. If you just admit to being what we all know it is big time, it's professional sports. It's not the amateur part of NCAA ended a long time ago. So that ideal amateurism, now all it is the idea. This is big. This is big money sports. And yeah, especially for basketball. These basketball players these guys have other options. They don't need North Carolina. They don't need Duke. They don't need Kentucky. They don't need these schools to be a big time prospect. And by the way, in the next collective bargaining agreement in the NBA, guys are going to be allowed to come directly from high school. That's coming. It's coming. I predict within 2 years, within 2022, 2023, that if not sooner, that's coming. So you know what? Don't need to go. Don't need to go. Don't need to go play with Coach Calipari or Krzyzewski to get to guarantee me being a lottery pick. I'm going directly to the NBA to get paid. And this is long overdue. This is long overdue. Change is coming in the NCAA. Again, I would be almost surprised if the NCAA Supreme Court does not rule in favor to allow not only players to get paid, but allow there to be no cap on how much players can get paid, and no cap on in terms of endorsements and what have you, and their brand, things getting paid off their likeness, things of that nature. And that is where the world is. That is where the world is right now. If you have content and people are willing to pay to hear your content, to see your content, you don't need corporations at all to put you on. Now you can use corporations as partners in terms of as a partnership. Like we're partnering. A perfect example, comedy special. I haven't watched it yet, but Andrew Schultz is dropping a comedy special on Netflix. Andrew Schultz doesn't need Netflix. That's a partnership from the standpoint of I'm not, I don't need you. He has YouTube. He has, he has his own, he has his own brand. He has his own, studio that he records out of. Doesn't need Netflix. He can deliver his content directly to the consumer without Netflix. That's where we're at in 2020. It is about the talent more than it's about the talent more than it has been ever before in entertainment, in sports, in any walk of life, to be honest with you. Couple real thoughts. So you haven't heard this was a bittersweet story. So the Negro League records from 1920 to 1948 will be included in Major League stats. It's just a matter of, you know, figuring out a couple details and which numbers are going to count. But this is basically a done deal. This is similar to what the NCAA situation is. This is frankly long overdue. Um, I encourage you to do research on the Negro Leagues. These were some of the greatest baseball players of all time. It is just, how they were treated by um, this country is symbolic of how African Americans have been treated by America since the beginning of time, seemingly. These guys were all-time great talents, Satchel Paige, Josh Gibson, Cool Papa Bell, guys that, Roy Campanella was, had a stint. Even Willie Mays had a stint, had a small stint in the Negro Leagues. And there's a movie called Soul of the Game that was that was on HBO about 20 plus years ago, around 96, mid to late 90s, where you have Michael T. Williamson playing Josh Gibson, Delroy Lindo playing Satchel Paige, and of course Blair Underwood playing Jackie Robinson. Excellent movie, definitely worth watching. But this is something that's long overdue. I can only give baseball so much credit because Faye Vincent, the late Bart Giamatti, Bud Selig all failed miserably. Peter Uberoff, these are all the commissioners that in the last 40 years or so all failed miserably in terms of handling this, in terms of not addressing this sooner. The history of baseball cannot be written without African Americans and the African American contributions to the sport of baseball. Some of the greatest players in the history of the sport are are African American players. Period. And it doesn't like the fact that I think the fact that there's not that the percentage of African Americans in baseball, that doesn't bother me as much as it bothers others, because I just don't think that our kids growing up in 2020 have an interest in baseball. They just don't. I don't know. I don't think baseball can frankly do anything about that. The game is too slow. We live in a microwave generation. People in general want things fast, quick. That's not baseball. Baseball is like cognac. You want to sip on it. It's not Gatorade. It's cognac. But it's unfortunate that a lot of these guys, mostly I would say all of these guys, maybe with the exception of Willie Mays, and maybe a couple other guys. I know Buck O'Neil died, back in 06. He was like 94. But most of these guys won't, are not around to even get this acknowledgement, which is to me just a major disgrace and really a black eye on baseball. Again, I'm not concerned about the impact of the actual numbers, because frankly, it's going to be minimum impact. Like, it's not going to change the RBI, the grade. It's not going to change who's number one in home runs or RBIs. You might have single season batting average that might be adjusted. They said Willie Mays is going to have like 17 extra hits, which is not going to make a difference as far as his standing in terms of all-time hits leader. So it's not even about the stats per se, or the impact that this has on the stats. It's about the fact that for the better part, up until this point, I can make a case that, there was a time when when Americans looked upon African Americans as 3/5 a person. It's not a big difference with baseball, to be honest with you. Looking at African Americans as 3/5 a baseball player. Yeah, I can definitely make that comparison, considering that these guys' records did not count as major league stats. And the Negro Leagues have been up until this point has been basically an afterthought. So, it's one of those things, I'm very careful in 2020 about when a corporation finally comes around to saying, hey, we 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 do respect African Americans, or they put out this messaging about, yeah, Black Lives Matter and no justice, no peace. I'm very, I want to see, I need to see more. I need to see, I want to see I want to see some CEOs and some owners in those corporations. Baseball, I don't know what else baseball could do. To be honest with you, to make me think that this is not pandering, but it certainly didn't help that it took this long for it to occur. It should have happened years ago. It should have happened 40, 50, 60 years ago, easily. 30, at least 30 years ago. So hats off to these, to a lot of those guys, to all those guys who, paved the way for African Americans to play in the major leagues, paved the way for Jackie Robinson, paved the way for Larry Doby's. So, again, do your research. I definitely encourage you to do your research on the Negro Leagues, and it was just, some of some of the greatest baseball players in the history of the sport. One last real thought. I don't know if you heard it, but Tom Cruise spazzed out on his crew who is currently shooting the newest Mission Impossible. I think it's Mission Impossible 7 out in London, for not following COVID protocols. Cruise, now again, we know Tom Cruise is not only the star, he's the producer. He puts money in, he's producer. He writes for these movies. Mission Impossibles are his baby, and rightfully so. Listen, there have been 2 previous times where they had to shut down production because a couple of people had tested positive for COVID. He apparently was at his wit's end, and he just let the crew, let everybody who was within the earshot, just let them have it. Let them have it. Now, listen, I can't blame him because, not only you're trying to get the movie done, you don't want to be responsible for anybody getting sick. You don't want that on you don't want that anywhere near your name if you're Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise, you can say what you want about him jumping on the couch and Scientology, all that stuff, and all that off the film, off the field stuff or off camera stuff. But his reputation as an actor, producer, is one of the biggest names in the history of Hollywood, and one of the most respected names in the business. So he's protecting people, and he's protecting his name. There's all there is to it. And I can't knock a dude for fighting to keep other people safe. I just can't. So that seemed, a lot of people are making a big deal over that mainly because the audio came out. And again, I thought, he yelled, he cursed. But again, through the yelling, you gotta sift through the yelling, sift through the curse words. He made valid points. Like, all his points were very valid in terms of what he was saying. And in terms of what he just, and I didn't think that he was playing. He was playing tough guy and playing or being a bully. I think he was genuinely like, "Yo, stop fucking around," and like, you can't follow these procedures or COVID protocols, and you're done. You're out. It's just that simple. It's just that simple. So, certainly did not have a major problem with that. I was wholehearted, 100% agree with his stance in terms of that. That's going to wrap it up for this latest edition of the Ril Dil Podcast. For my Wire audience, we are coming back with a Wire episode. We're going to wrap up season 3 finale on Saturday, so stay tuned for that. Didn't do an episode last week, but apologize for that. We're coming back this week, coming back strong, along with the one and only Robert Sapp. Have a safe rest of the evening. I will see you next time on this latest edition of the Ril Dil Podcast. As always, subscribe to my YouTube channel. Subscribe, comment, spread the word. Appreciate your support. I'm out.